Aloha and welcome back to WANDEROUS. I am your host, Andrew Crusoe, and today I have a couple cool stories about a walk that I actually wanted to take across Kathmandu. Unlike the first time where I sort of accidentally did it, I finally had the opportunity, once I switched couch surfing hosts, to explore Lalitpur and the legendary market of Thamel. Come along with me. So I was just coming off of kind of an emotional roller coaster. I had just stayed 3 nights in Kirtipur with a really lovely couple. And my second host, where I would also be staying for 3 nights, was right down in Patan Darbar Square. The Palace Square, now Patan, P-A-T-A-N, is one of my top, if you look up Kathmandu, everybody, it's not a secret. It's really famous. You should walk around the area. We're going to talk about that in a later episode. Today, we're going to talk about kind of the surrounding area and Thamel, which is a very dynamic and vibrant market in Kathmandu, and a little walking tour that I gave myself. It's the kind of city where feels actually pretty walkable. There are little sidewalks and walkways. There are a lot of motorbikes too, though. So if you're not used to being aware of your surroundings, and a motorbike could come within a couple feet, a meter of you, be prepared for that. I think if you spend a few days in Kathmandu, you will start to adjust to that. And in my experience, most people are the opposite of aggressive drivers, thank God, because it wouldn't really work if they were. They're quite thoughtful. And overall, and I will talk about this, especially when we get to my time in Pokhara, my impression of the Nepali people, and I was there for almost exactly 3 months, my impression of most of the Nepali people was that they were rather gentle and quite thoughtful overall. Nepal really felt like a second home in a way that I did not expect. I'm still nostalgic for my time in Nepal a few years later. But the day really started by this kind of hospitality, although I was hosted by an Indian who are also very hospitable. And he took me to this little, I had this whole circuitous way of trying to find where he lived, because they don't even use normal numbers. They use old Nepali number script. I forget the word for it, but you have to, if you're looking for a specific address, I should probably warn you, it will not be written in the Arabic numbers that you and I know that are pretty much everywhere except for Nepal and parts of India, and I think also parts of Bhutan. They use numbers that are kind of similar. Their 3 is sort of like a 3 with an extra curly at the bottom. It looks like a 3. Okay, fine. But the other numbers, not so much. So you might want to download, or maybe I'll see if I can put in the show notes for this episode, a little cheat sheet of Nepal numbers. Most of them are similar, but some of them are really not similar. I think the symbol for the number 8 is like a backward 3, and that's fun. So it made finding the address a little more interesting, you could say. But I found it, and my host said, hey, let's go walk around, and showed me around the area. I dropped off my stuff, and he took me to a small little tea place where we got some tea with lemon, and it was the cheapest tea I've ever had in my life. This is going to be a theme, right? I think it was 10 Nepali rupees. Now, for reference, at the time, and this is still true as of this recording, 1 Nepali rupee is about less than a penny. Another way to say it would be $1 is 130, about 130 Nepali rupees. So that gives you an idea. Yeah, less than a penny. And to go eat out in general, if you knew where you were going, was going to be very affordable. Unless you make the mistake that I did later that day, but we'll get to that. Speaking of food, one of the first things I recommend you do, one of the first things that I do when I get to a couch surfing host place, is I go to the grocery store and I get some food. You can save, even in a developing country, you could save a significant amount of money. I would say you can end up spending half you would on food if you just go and get some simple stuff. I like to buy oats. Most places you can find oats. If you can't find oats, You can find some cereal, you can find something simple, even rice you can find to cook, because people, most of them are going to have like a tiny kitchen. Even people in a shared living situation will have access. And I think it's also a beautiful way to share and connect with the person hosting with you. You can make them something just even simple. A little bit of energy can go a long way when you're using something like couchsurfing.com, which is what I was using. I've met some, as I said in many episodes, I've met some of the coolest, most generous, most like bright, amazing humans I've ever met were on couchsurfing, including some people who have been like lifelong friends. So I really recommend it. They should sponsor the show, because I will continue singing their praises, because that's been my experience using. And there are many of my stories have a couchsurfing component, because I love staying with locals. You just learn so much. You learn so much more. And it's just beautiful. It's cultural exchange, and it's beautiful. It's amazing. We're in this time where it's possible to do something like that. The internet makes that possible. Anyway, I went to this big grocery store. I went to a few little ones, and I wasn't happy with what I was seeing. I was still wandering around, still adjusting to, kind of how dusty the streets are in Kathmandu. The area, Patan itself, is nicer, but it was being rebuilt at the time. They had a huge earthquake in 2015. And even then, over 7 years later, they were still rebuilding and resurfacing the roads and doing a lot of stuff. So it was a little rough around the edges. And I made my way, actually walked again, a few kilometers to the ring road, because Patan is sort of in the middle. It's kind of in the middle of the ring, so it's a little bit of a distance. And I found on Google Maps a large supermarket, and I realized that I wasn't going to find oats in a normal supermarket. It wasn't something, they don't grow oats in Nepal. And to find food that's imported, you almost always, especially in developing country, you have to go to a supermarket. You have to go to a big box. So I found this supermarket, which I will recommend, called Bhatbhateni, Bhatbhatni. Bha is actually a letter. In their alphabet, Bha is a different letter than BA. It's more of a breathy BA, if that makes sense. So Bhatbhateni was really big, and they seemed to be they were very excited about cookies. That's all I'm going to say about that. I have a photo that I'm going to share with people who support the show. Of course, you can support the show. I really appreciate it at any level. But if you support the show at $10 a month, you get a crazy amount of bonus content. Not only do you get tons of photos every Wednesday, you also get access to 4 audiobooks now that you can stream anywhere. You can stream them through the website or through the Patreon app. And of course, you can cancel anytime. And you also get access to private episodes of this show, After Dark episodes, that are much more, I call them After Darks. And I forgot to mention this last week, that are much more personal and often somewhat more embarrassing. True stories that happened during this time as well. So sometimes I'll get to a story where I'm like, oh, I don't want that to be public forever, because the internet mistakes are forever. That I don't want certain things to be just like floating around forever, because sometimes really personal things that I want to be able to tell the story, but I don't necessarily want it to be public, because mostly because you need context to appreciate. So the people that do join have been listening and know if you do decide to join, you will have probably heard a couple episodes of this. So you'll be able to understand the context and the spirit with which I'm moving forward in my own personal growth. Patreon.com, patreon.com/Hello Crusoe. That's the home of all my creative projects. And your support makes this labor of love possible. Because, that's just how it is. And I really, really appreciate those of you who've been supporting. As someone who's been supporting over 7 years, you know who you are. I wish I could give you a big hug, but I'm on Bali. And I don't have any Patreon supporters living on Bali yet. So I'm wandering around Bhatbhateni, which is the biggest interior air-conditioned space I've been in so far. Not that it's particularly hot. It's actually quite comfortable. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. October is the perfect time to go to Nepal. In fact, I would say that Nepal might be the best place in the world to be in October if you've never been there. It doesn't rain. It's like 26, 27 degrees Celsius. It's 70s if you like Fahrenheit. It's not humid. The only challenge with Nepal would be if you're in Kathmandu, it's going to be dusty. If you stay in your city center, it won't be the best air quality. It just won't be. They're not there yet. But if you get out of Kathmandu, the air quality in many places is quite good, in my experience. But anyway, I'm wandering around Bhatbhateni, and I'm seeing all these American breakfast cereals that are not healthy, not great. And I had to take a photo of this too. There's this like blue sign. They're so excited. You can tell. It says new arrival! Exclamation point. Post, which, are post breakfast cereals like Honey Bunches of Oats, which, I have a history with it. Not as much now, but, in the past. Post, made in USA. And I was like, wow, I am literally on the other side of the planet. And there are people that are excited to spend 800 rupees. I mean, that's a lot of money for them. For our, 300 grams of sweetened cereal. But, it's unique. I mean, there are some certain tastes that you only get with, I would say, you only get with certain cereals. And there are cereals that, what is that? Cocoa Beach, rest in peace. Never going to have that cereal again. They don't make it anymore. So sometimes you got to jump where the jumping is hot. But I managed to find some, I think I bought almonds, or I didn't take a photo of what I bought. I'm not that dorky. But I got some food and I felt good about it. And on my way back to where I was staying, I stopped at a little coffee house. Now, I don't usually promote specific businesses. I try not to give away promotions for free. But this is a very humble and actually partly student-run coffee house. So I want to draw some attention to them because it's a beautiful space and they're just lovely. They're lovely. It was very quiet and very clean, and it's called Kaidako, Kaidako, Kaidako Coffee House, kind of near the airport. Also very close to Bhatbhateni because I was walking. Because I like to walk around new cities. I get a special feel for it. They'll make these like big bridges, and you have the overpass over the highway, over the ring road. And I was just getting a feel for what is this town like. And there were cows that would wander around occasionally. It was adventurous. But I got down to this area where the coffee house was, and it was just so lovely. They had an aquarium. I had a kind of like an acai bowl, but it wasn't really ground up. It was like an oatmeal, fruit, cranberry, pumpkin seed, delightful dish. And it was just the perfect thing to have for a late lunch because I was really just craving fruit for some reason. And then I did manage to jump on, and I'll be sharing a better photo of this later. I jumped in one of these little micro buses. They have mini buses. But I was like, I'm pretty close. I should try to make it up to the middle north area of the city. I should try to see Pashupatinath, which is the oldest temple complex in Kathmandu. They think it's the oldest one in Nepal. There is evidence to show that there was a temple there 300 BCE. So that's a little while ago. Anyway, so I take this mini bus for like 15 Nepali rupees up to Pashupatinath. It's not that far. I've been walking a lot, and I'm just gonna start. I'm gonna ease into figuring out the quite chaotic, and my couch surfing host kind of warned me of this quite chaotic bus situation. But the thing is, you start to ask locals, and you're like, "Hey, I want to take the bus. Where should I go?" They are very happy to just point you in the direction, like, "Hey, it's cool." But I got to Pashupatinath, but it was a bit late, and I wish I'd gotten there a bit earlier. I would return to Pashupatinath. This was sort of a stumble in and not know what you're doing kind of moment. And I get down, and there are a couple memories of Pashupatinath. The first memory was that they wanted to charge me something like 1,200 rupees to go in, because they knew, of course, they could tell I was a foreigner and I didn't know the rules. And this is something that will happen is like, depending, it was confusing to me though, because I was seeing people passing me and they weren't asking them. And of course, they were Indian or Nepali, and of course they can do that. But it was a little bit discouraging to me because they weren't even checking for ID, and this will happen. Let's just say that the whole ticketing situation at Pashupatinath was not very transparent, and it really seemed very variable. When I came back with a friend, a Nepali friend, we just walked in and nobody said anything and nobody paid anything. He didn't pay anything. I didn't pay anything. Now that might have been because it was after 7:30 at night. It might have been a timing thing. I don't know. I'd love to learn. But there are a few things that are hard to learn just from reading the internet about some of these places, because if nobody writes about their experience, you're not going to know. You're just not going to know, because these places aren't going to describe their policies on a website, or they will a little bit, or they will, and then the website will go down. Like, it's just not as, it's a little more, in my experience, it's a little more chaotic. But again, developing country, is getting infrastructure, kind of up to par with some other places, and they're working really hard. When I was there, one thing we'll talk about in terms of infrastructure that was very interesting was what they were doing in Kathmandu and in Pokhara to make enough space for sidewalks. Remind me to talk about that later, because it was funny and intense to do what they were doing, especially in Pokhara. I need to put a note. I'll make a note to talk about what was going on with sidewalks. And I don't know if it's like eminent domain. Google eminent domain, or maybe don't. Anyway, my second memory of Pashupatinath that night. Of course, Pashupati is an incarnation of, or manifestation of Shiva, one of the big three, right? You've got Shiva, Brahma, and Vishnu. Those are the three. It's kind of the Hindu. Is it weird? Is it weird if I call it a Hindu trinity? They're all parts of the big thing, right? And, the creator, destroyer, preserver, they all have these roles. And Pashupatinath is huge. That's the other thing. It has over 500 small temples inside of that whole area. And the river goes through there. They cremate people along the edge of the river, just like they do in India. And it's pretty wild. Although I didn't see the cremation the first time that I went there. You don't see much. It's just a fire. But there are people who are honored to have their body burned there after they die, because it is such a sacred, powerful place. My second memory of Pashupatinath was watching and recording a video of these monkeys just having a lot of fun behind a gate on this temple. And I'll add, there's a video that's already been on YouTube for a while that I'll put in the show notes. Show notes can always be found, of course, wherever you're listening to this. Of course, it's on YouTube. Please subscribe to me on YouTube if you enjoy the show. It really does help. I'm just Andrew Crusoe, Andrew, Crusoe. And of course, it's also in the show notes on Spotify. If you like Spotify, then subscribe to me there instead. You know how to use this stuff. You'll figure it out. But I do work on the show notes. I do put more effort into the show notes than maybe I should. I don't know. But I like to try to be comprehensive, and there's some fun, totally free behind the scenes stuff, because it's been on YouTube for a while anyway, so I'm just going to link to it. And I also passed a cow. There were cows wandering around, which is pretty normal for India and Nepal. Cows just hanging out. This was a pretty cool looking cow, to be honest, though. It was one of those black and white ones. I did visit a very cute, and I really like the photos from this, a little Ganesha temple, or Ganesh. Now, Ganesh, of course, is the son of, I believe he's the son of Shiva. He's the guy with the elephant head, which is a whole story that I won't go into. But Ganesh is the deity of removing obstacles. You can always pray to Ganesh to help you remove obstacles. This is what the Hindus do. Ganesh, fun fact, is also the first deity that Hindus invoke when they build a new temple. Ganesh is always the first like deity that they draw and pray to at the temple. I guess to remove obstacles to success for the temple. I should do more research on that probably. But this particularly Ganesh was painted this characteristic like fire orange that you'll see. You'll also see if you see Hanuman. Hanuman, the monkey deity, the monkey god, he's a real character. He basically owns the color orange in India and Nepal. If you see any bright face, it's usually Hanuman. We'll get to that, especially in India. But this Ganesh was inside of this just ornately beautiful square temple with a golden doorway and lions guarding it. These photos will definitely be available on the Patreon for supporters. I think I have, like over 30 photos coming on Wednesday that I'm really excited to share. I'm also including, because you'll remember if you listened to the last episode, I was having a real tough time with ATMs in Nepal, and my couch surfing host felt really bad, and he just Googled how to withdraw money in ATM. I'm like, dude, I know how to Google, but Google, this is before Google tried to be AI-tastic, I would say. It would pop up like in big text what it felt was the best result back then. And it listed some ATMs that it recommended, like Everest Bank and Himalaya Bank and Nabil Bank. And I was like, Nabil, or Nabil. That was what worked for me. So yeah, Google was right. This is, again, I've said this before, have a backup card. It just can be complicated, unfortunately. The next day I spent some more time just soaking in the Patan Darbar Square area. Very pretty and surprisingly like well-kept streets, swept streets, which is not always the case in a large Asian city, especially a South Asian city. I was very impressed that these streets were as clean as they were. Very photogenic these fruit stalls, the bananas, the apples, the oranges, what are those? Persimmons, apples, coconuts. Very pretty, very great place to go. It was just very colorful, very beautiful. And these very old brick buildings that were several stories tall. I got some beautiful photos of that as well. I found myself, as I wandered around during the day, I found myself at the Pimbahal Pokhari Krishna Temple. Pimbahal is quite a popular temple. They have this reservoir sort of in the middle space. It's one of those temples, there's probably a better word for it. I'm not a Hindu, obviously, but they have this temple is built around this square kind of reservoir that they've made. It kind of takes up an entire city block, and it provides a really lovely sort of break in the kind of unending sea of brick buildings. There's some variation, but having this body of water in the middle of Patan, really Lalitpur. Lalitpur is the town that the Darbar Square is actually in. Lalitpur is it's basically like South Kathmandu. I think it's technically in Kathmandu district, but it's just like great little break in the middle of Lalitpur. It was so pretty. I don't know how to describe it otherwise. It was very pretty. And of course, you stumble into these small temples, micro temples around the main temple. And one thing you will notice if you wander around, which I really recommend you do, please give yourself time to do kind of nothing, but it will be filled with something. It'll be filled with something really, really special, because you will come across deeply significant objects. One of the things you will see many of these, are Vajra, which means a thunderbolt. The Tibetans call them dorje. If you study Hinduism or Buddhism, you've heard of these probably. They are very important ritualistic. It's basically like this double-headed crown thing. It's considered like the most powerful weapon in the universe in Hindu mythology. And I came across a very beautiful Vajra just mounted on a circular like offering stone that was powdered in this bright magenta. It's like tika powder. They would touch it to your forehead to bless you. And people would make offerings and pray at this place. I would be seeing a lot of Vajra, but I didn't know what they were at the time. I really should have done more research before I went to Nepal, but I was sort of like just giving myself a crash course, you could say. So you'll see Vajra everywhere, along with the bell. I'm blanking on the name of the bell right now, but they will have a bell in one hand and a Vajra on the other, and the priests will use both of these during ritual and blessings and many, many ceremonies that they do. And they're quite beautiful objects, actually. They represent also, I've heard and read it said that they represent the masculine and feminine aspects of the human experience. Vajra is something to be aware of. You will see this, it's like a metal scepter. It usually looks bronze, and there are these ribs that meet in the middle. And usually it's mounted just like horizontal. It's a strange object. If you've never seen it before, it's very, very interesting, and you will see them. If you go to Nepal, when you go to Nepal, I should say, you will see them. So my next plan, the thing I really wanted to get done that day, was to go to Thamel. Not to be confused with Thamel. Thamel is a person from Tamil Nadu. That's a whole, basically, nation inside of India. Thamel, I say it kind of similar, but Thamel is a market district. It's a whole cool area with a bunch of little shops, and it is probably the most famous market in the whole country of Nepal. And I plan it out, and I'm like, hey, I can walk there. It's like 30 minutes or whatever. And I find myself taking these big flyways. I've got some funny photos going over the traffic and coming across, and this might turn into a theme, coming across a lot of Coca-Cola signs. Sometimes when you're walking around Nepal, my observation, it felt like half the city was sponsored by Coca-Cola, and I had mixed feelings about that, because that's sugar water, and that's not, I don't think it's very helpful. That's all. I did manage to find, and I got so excited about this that I took a photo. I found an actual bus stop sign for the first time. I have photographic proof. This blue sign and a bus speeding away, which I don't think I caught that bus. I think that I just kept walking, because the timing, again, you might be at the right place, but if you're not there at the right time, heaven help you, because as I've said before, there really aren't any bus schedules. At least there weren't a few years ago when I was there. They're just gonna come. I mean, they're just supposed to come every 10 to 40 minutes, depending on where you are, and depending on the situation, might not be worth it for you. But I did find, I got to sort of the edge of Thamel, and it was getting really, really popping. The energy was just popping. About 1 billion motorcycles were parked. This is the main vehicle that people use in Nepal, because cars have a crazy import tax. Later on, a Nepali told me that the import tax for an automobile is something like 200 or 300%. So that means that if the car costs, let's say it's a cheap car, let's say it's a $10,000 car, which is a lot of money for them, they'll have to pay to legally buy it in Nepal and get it registered. $40,000 for a $10,000 car. So the import fees are so crazy that there's very few people. If you have an automobile, you are a rich person in Nepal. Or you're an Indian who doesn't have it registered in Nepal. And it's very easy for the Indians to go up there, even start a business, which I would learn later. Anyway, I went to the veg food place, and it was really good. And I got to Thamel, the middle of Thamel, right around sunset. And I was just so struck by how colorful and dynamic. They're selling everything there. They're super excited about cashmere. You'll find out if you go. They're super excited. There's a lot of signs talking about just cashmere, this, cashmere, that, all authentic. There are people that have those, you have the little draw carts, what's the word for them? The bicycle where two people can sit in a large covered area in the back. They can take you all around, but they're quite a bit more than the rideshare services, which is a bit strange considering that they're not paying for fuel. But I would recommend that actually. I regret not doing that because it looked like a lot of fun. And it's just vibrant. There's neon lights, reds and greens and blues. And I was there to get some pants. I needed some pants because I was starting to get cold and it was only going to get chillier as we moved into November. Not that chilly, but at night it could get pretty chilly. It could get, 5 Celsius. It could get, 40s at night. And I went to a couple spots. I came across the Kemp 8848, which are the most expensive pants I've ever seen in my life. You could spend $200 on, like really $200, maybe more, on but look like pretty normal trekking pants. And I was like, oh, this must be for those Mount Everest people because they know that some of these tourists are loaded, right? Some of these tourists are, they've budgeted 50,000 American dollars on this trip. Buying expensive pants might be nothing to them. So there's a very big range of price points in Thamel, a big range of the kinds of people that you're going to come across too. Anyway, I managed to find some North Face convertible pants that turned into shorts, which was very preferable at the time. And I got those for quite a good deal. I think I got them for like $12, which is very reasonable. So with my navy blue North Face pants safely in my waterproof backpack, I headed north. I wanted to check out a couple hostels just to have a backup plan. Sometimes I like to have a backup plan. And I found one that was like really cool. It was called the Yog, Y-O-G hostel, which I would years later find out was the original pronunciation of the word yoga, apparently. Yog hostel, it was delightful. It was a really cool building, first of all. Of course, it was fully nighttime at this point. And the building was like 4 levels. They had a rooftop cafe, and above the cafe, and I wish I'd taken more photos of this, was like a whole nother level where they just built like a metal subsection above the building itself, and it just kept going up. It was very dreamlike and a little bit unsettling when the wind kind of kicked up. But there was people from all over the place. Really good vibes. Definitely something to check out. Yog Hostel, Y-O-G, in Kathmandu. Pretty cool. And they had quite a great view of the city itself. I've snapped a nice raw image with my Olympus camera. I could even see from there Swayambhunath, which is a place I'd be going the very next day. A very famous temple on a hill, one of the most sacred Buddhist temples in the world, and colloquially called the Monkey Temple because there are a lot of monkeys there, but they were actually some of the most chill monkeys that I came across, which was good. Very beautiful. We'll be talking about that most likely next week. Very beautiful. But to be able to get a bit of an overview of Kathmandu after my long day was very much welcome. They also had I took some photos of the place. It's people who follow the show will enjoy that. And I believe that I took a Patao ride back. Again, P-A-T-H-A-O is the Nepal version of Uber. I'll put that in the show notes. Spell that out. You can find that on Apple Store or the Google Play Store. Apple Store. I mean the App Store. You know what I mean. And the other one is InDrive, which is just the word in and drive. And they both are good to have. Sometimes one's cheaper than the other. Who knows why? There's complicated math, computer maths to figure that out. But I had a really long day. This was a well-rounded day. Frankly, you don't need to go to all these places, but I would definitely say you need to visit Thamel. Thamel is such an interesting, dynamic market. There's tons of food there. There's electronics shops, clothing shops, hats shops, rugs, lamps. It's interesting. And some of the stalls are only like 2 meters wide. There's just a lot packed in. It's profoundly pedestrian in a good way. It's mostly just people walking around. People park their bikes sort of outside the square, and you just go around. It's a bunch of blocks. It's vaguely confusing, but people are very helpful, and they'll help you if you get a little bit lost. It's fun to get lost in a place like Thamel Market, though, because the people are cool. Honestly, they are. And they love that you can just talk story with, a guy, selling pants or hats or whatever, and you'll find out that he's from Lumbini, which is where the Buddha was born. I mean, you just kind of, it's an interesting vibe. The whole thing, the whole place is such an interesting vibe. And that's pretty much my time staying at Patan Darbar Square. Those are the highlights. I would be moving on to my last host in Kathmandu very soon. I will say, even though my second couch surfing host, it was a little bit rough. He let me use his very different kind of clothes washing machine, which I could do a whole episode about, this clothes washer. I'd never seen one like this before, and they're small. They're very small, little agitators, and you put like a couple kilograms of clothes in there. But it works. It works, and then it has a spin cycle. Very few people have a dryer though, because electricity, it can be expensive for them. So everybody hang dries their clothes, but I was very thankful that my host let me do some laundry, because that is the one thing. That is the one annoying thing that will pop up as you bounce around, I don't care who you are. You got to think about laundry a bit. And there isn't always going to be laundry service nearby. You will be dealing with logistics. And that's when we learn the most about ourselves, I find, is when we face some little challenges. Not a big deal, but being able to do your laundry at your host place is always a godsend, basically. So this was a very scatterbrained episode, maybe. But it was my 4th, 5th, and 6th days in Kathmandu. I was starting to adapt. I was using the bus. I was starting to get comfortable with the bus. I forgot to mention the amazing little dhaba. That's right, the dhaba. A dhaba is like a little food hut that something like truck drivers will use, but it might not have been a dhaba. It might have been a bancha. Bancha means kitchen, but it was like a little restaurant. And they had dal bhat with vegetables for the equivalent of like 90 cents. But the really cool thing was the old man kept coming over. And he said, "Do you want more?" And I will tell you this, it was unlimited dal bhat. And for me, having such a long day, to not have to think about ordering again, I felt like, I'm just in the right place at the right time. And it was like, yeah, okay, it's rice and lentils. It's not fancy, but these are well seasoned, and it just hit the spot, and maybe it's just something about being there. It will hit the spot, and lentils are very good. I had a whole rant in one episode about gut flora and how important the bacteria in your gut are to your overall happiness and how well you'll be able to travel. Lentils are very good for gut flora, so very much encouraged. But if I can find that little restaurant or cafe, I'll put it. But I don't know if it was even in Google Maps. It's one of these places where you just kind of wander around. There's like an alley, and then there's like a bunch of tables, and it's a real place. Like, they have a sign, but it doesn't mean that they're easy to find. And that, I would say Kathmandu is quite good for that. They have little secrets, and the roads are not a grid. It's like an Easter egg hunt. You're just finding little hidden Easter eggs in the simulation of life, right? And sometimes you can manifest some really cool stuff. And there is some very cool stuff coming up. Once again, thank you for listening. If you have any questions, please leave a comment on Spotify or YouTube. I really appreciate your comments, and I will do my best. I will endeavor to answer any questions you have thoughtfully and concisely, probably. Yeah, you can find little clips of this show on my Instagram if you want to see my face, what it's doing during these, and Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Instagram and TikTok, my username is the same as Patreon. Hello Crusoe. Once again, people who do support the show, thank you. I just want to thank you publicly again for making this podcast possible, and the books that I'm working on. Some of you know, and some of you may not know, that I write tropical sci-fi, and I'm working on a book right now that I'm really excited about, and you can hear more about that on my Instagram. But anyway, this is a travel show. My travels definitely definitely affect the sci-fi, but they're just two sides of a funny coin that is me. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time. Aloha.